Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video I'm focusing on the Nicholas Conver Tarot of Marseille, particularly created by the Artisan Tarot group. They released a Kickstarter yesterday, September 22nd, 2021, and they reached their goal in 3 hours, which is incredible. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us a few things. It tells us that it's priced right. Yeah, and it also tells us that it's a very special deck and it's beautiful. Now, I did a run through of the deck yesterday, and it's in my playlist for deck reviews. They were gracious enough to ask me if I would do a review, and I was thrilled to do it. So you will see each and every card in that review. But today's video is focusing on it as it compares to a facsimile deck. Now, the facsimile deck I'm using today in comparison was done by Yves Renaud. It's based on the original cards from the Conver that exist in the French National Library, the British Museum, and a museum in Japan. And I may or may not make comment or comparison to the Tarot of Marseille, the Millennium Edition, created by Wilfred Houdouin, or Houdouin. So I don't know if I'm saying his name properly, and I do apologize. But my guess is that it's Wilfred Houdouin. Before we even get to the cards, let's look at the boxes. Now, both of these decks are based on the same deck, right? They're both based on the Nicholas Conver deck of 1760. One deck is, the packaging is decidedly much more modern, although, this is the original card back. So they're not like doing anything outrageous, but they figured out a way to market it for a new generation, and the facsimile deck, has a very substantial box. Sometimes these decks were wrapped in paper cloth. They probably wouldn't have come in a box. But when you see these two decks on a shelf, and you're a tarot reader and you're going to a store, for example, and you see both, you say, well, they're both the Conver, but which one is more attractive to the 21st century eye? Probably this one, right? This one has a little bit of an aloofness to it. It's like special. They're both special, but it's just got a sense of, well, you can look at this, but you probably shouldn't touch it, or you can use it for history, or you could use it as reference, but this is probably the one that's going to be more approachable and more usable. And I think, that's exactly right. Just on the boxes alone, you get a sense that you're going to reach for this one, because this one is more palpable to our eyes. They're both based on the same deck, right? But this one just seems more in keeping with who we are, And I think that's an important point to make, because I think that that's what's going to end up being the case. Now, when I compare both of these decks to one another in size, let's see, do it this way. So the Artisan is maybe a little wider, and the Renaud is maybe, can you see that, a little taller, but they're more or less roughly the same size. However, the thickness is considerably different, and that's because of the cardstock. The Renaud deck is, more of an art deck, and that the papers are, they're quality papers. There's some flexibility, but you will never ruffle shuffle this deck. You will never riffle shuffle this deck, ever, I don't think. If you do, you'll ruin them. I have at least a dozen of these card, these decks from Yves, and I never riffle shuffle. This one, this one just glides in your hand, and I think it's due to its finish. If you can make that out, it's a linen finish. It's a dream finish. Linen, linen cardstock is just, I think, the best. And this, and this deck just screams for, just screams to be riffle shuffled. So if you're, a modern day reader and you like to riffle shuffle, I don't think you have anything to feel guilty about riffle shuffling this deck. Old habits die hard. I'll probably continue to do my overhand shuffling, but let's face it, no shuffle shuffles a deck better than a riffle shuffle. And so from time to time, I'm going to riffle shuffle this deck to get, to get a good mix. They both share about a similar sheen. Neither is glossy, but they both share a similar sheen. They catch the light beautifully well. They both do. Now, the one impression that I have a couple impressions about the Artisan deck, which I think will be made clear as we, look at the cards. One is that it brings greater clarity to what we're looking at. And clarity in tarot is really what we're looking for. I mean, my name is even Tarot Clarity, right? Because when you do an interpretation using the cards, you're trying to bring clarity to a situation. But if there's confusion in the cards themselves, that could be a distraction for you, and it could be a distraction for your client who's hung up on a detail of the card, So I think it's very fair to say that the Artisan group brought great clarity, and to what we're looking at, and they've revitalized it just with the boxes alone. There's a revitalization that's going on here that's giving it new energy, new life, right? The faces are the same, the details are, the same, but there's new energy. The bateleur is just more present, right? There's a disadvantage with viewing facsimile decks such as Yves Renaud's deck, because time has faded the lines. Time has discolored some of the colors, and so that's one area where the restoration deck, or the revitalized, I like to call it a revitalized deck of the Artisan group, shines. And also you'll notice, and you've probably already noticed if you're a fan of TDM style cards, that in many of the garments of the trump cards, and also in the court cards, there tends to be like a confusion. Not so much in this card, of course, right when I'm making that example, but there seems to be like a lot of confusion about what's going on in the garments, and bear in mind that a lot of times that the cards were colored by stencil by children who maybe didn't know what they were looking at, or didn't know how to make sense of what they were seeing, and maybe some of their colorizations were a little on the random side. You see here the cutout for the shield. Now the warrior, the knight, would have been holding the shield from behind, right? And then these cutouts, which you can plainly see in the Artisan, where the sword would have gone through, right? Where he would have rested his sword. And, in this, original facsimile, that was lost on whoever colored it, right? They didn't maybe understand what they were looking at. If it was a negative shape, the color that should have been coming through would have been the red or the green of the leg, or the background, which was white, but certainly there was nothing red there. So they've just made greater sense through their research of what it is that we're looking at. And the Pope is a good case in point. In some TDM decks, it almost looks like, what are these things? Like, are they like ribbons or bumps on his knees? For many, it's lost on the viewer that they're two worshipers, or they're two, or they're pilgrims. This, has a pilgrim hat, so they've made a pilgrimage to, meet with the Pope, right? And they have a particular hairstyle that was typical for holy men, which is a tonsure, which is hair and a shaven or bald spot in their head, right? But that's all but lost here. They became negative shapes through which the garment of the Pope came through. And then, then you have the confusion of these hands, and then this blue thing. So, the artisan group brought great clarity to their deck. They made sense of that space, which should have been the garment of the Pope. These are their heads. These are bodies, and the hand belongs to this guy, and this hand belongs to that guy. So, those of us who are familiar with TDM understand what we're looking at this. When we look at this card, we know what these things are. But when you really come to think of it, when you really, scrutinize it, I can see saying, like, what the hey, right? So the artisan, this is where the artisan shines. It shines in bringing clarity and revitalizing what we're seeing. The pooty here is kind of washed out. It's there. But here, he's alive. He's, Cupid is alive and well. She's got flowers in her hair, which kind of just blend with her hair, and they took the opportunity in the artisan to just, bring the flowers to life, make them noticeable. Yeah, they made a lot of sense from the confusion here with the Justice card, right? It just makes sense. And they made artistic decisions regarding the cloak of the hermit. And the undergarment. They took the opportunity to, fix details like this spoke, this pole. It makes sense that the Wheel of Fortune is being cranked, right? Is being supported. It got lost here. And in many decks, this detail is lost because it was copied incorrectly over and over, right? Now, on the Death card, I've always wondered with the Conver, it's black with like yellow on top of it. And I wonder if that was the printer's way of trying to make green. We'll never know. I don't know. What the yellow over the black was supposed to do, right? But here they very strikingly decided to make the earth black, which may have been what they intended in this. I'm not really sure, but it's striking. It's striking. It's beautiful. They did change the color, the pigmentation of, certainly of the skeleton we just saw, and in some cases the pigmentation of the individuals. They maintained the detail. I mean, you don't lose any of the detail of the wings. In fact, if anything, they're brought into greater clarity. Those kind of details were kept, and as were, facial expressions. just more present. There's a little bit of confusion here about what's going on, you know, in this area here. But here they clearly show that the crown of the building is separate, has been knocked off, right? There's some confusion in the Conver the facsimile rather. We have a negative shape that wasn't filled in the landscape in the background. She's in water, you know, she's literally in water here. Whereas with other decks, we get a sense that she really is on land, right? And so, and it kind of looks like, you know, this is land here. This area here is being treated differently than this area. So given historically, we know that one knee is on land and the other, you know, is in water. Or, you know, she's on land at some point, right? So this may have just been something that was confused, you know. And here it's very clear that she's kneeling on land and pouring in the water, and she has one foot just barely in the water. And they made sense of that negative space. And the crustacean, the crayfish, is more present. So it's the little details, you know. And it looks decidedly modern, you know. I mean, it's the same deck. You know, it's the same deck created in 1760. But it just seems so much more alive, right? It just seems more, you know, it just seems more alive. So definitely clarity and revitalization are the words that I would use to describe the artisan, you know, version of the Conver. It brought it back to life, it revitalized it, and it clarified. Now, you know, bear in mind that these cards would have been held in your hand for playing. This was the purpose. This was the marketing purpose of these cards was, you know, they were playing cards. Now, I'm convinced that there were little old ladies and maybe not so little old ladies and men in, you know, Italy from the time that these decks were created who were taking the opportunity to interpret the images of the cards. No one can convince me otherwise. In fact, Ataya, you know, claimed that he learned how to interpret the cards from someone in the Piedmont region of Italy. So that stands to reason that it was a long-standing tradition in Italy, and probably anywhere, you know, is the temptation to interpret cards. But these cards were created to hold in the hand for playing. And imagine their beauty. I mean, imagine playing a game of cards with a deck as beautiful as this, you know? And, you know, no wonder it was only a stone's throw away to saying, wow, these cards are really something. Like, I see something in this. Maybe I see an eye here, you know. And, you know, it only takes a little bit of an imagination to go in that direction. But again, the disadvantage of time, you know, I'm sure that when Conver created the deck, the blacks were black, right? They were sharp, you know, but we lose that now. And here we have it back. They're razor sharp. So we haven't lost any of the beauty of these cards. It's just been enhanced, you know. They made sense of this, the webbing, on the sword cards, and I think also on the batons. They made a lot of sense. You know, here it's like very vague, like what's going on here? Clearly, I don't know, it just seems like that's not the way it was supposed to be, you know? But they're mass producing cards, and, you know, maybe it's not exactly what the, you know, the creator intended, but whatever. Crank those cards out, you know, we got to make a profit. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's how it happened. It wasn't maybe such a bad thing, you know, they just, or maybe it was even under the direction of Conver himself. Don't worry, just, you know, don't worry, just make that area blue. It's fine. But with our, you know, advanced technologies, we're able to do things differently. Maybe it wasn't cost effective back in those days. Oh, look at that. The Suit of Swords is my favorite suit in this deck, especially when you line them up and the dynamic, oh, just gorgeous, just gorgeous. And I think you see what I'm talking about. Now, you know, some decks have the swords for the 10 facing down. I like them facing down. Some have them up. For some reason, my gut tells me they're supposed to be facing down. But who knows? This on the other cards, they're facing up. And now we have the quartz. I'll be using the Artisan Deck to be doing, you know, how to read the court cards. I'll be using them for demonstration a few times this month. Oh, so you have greater understanding of what's going on in the horse. His hooves. And there's a special name for the blanket on the horse. I forget what it's called. So clarification on the garment of the Queen of Swords. The king is okay, you know, it was okay except for the confusion between his legs here. I don't know why they would have made that green. And you see, you know, that black with the yellow on top of it. You know, so I'm thinking that is how they made their green, because they've made it green here. And you see the space, the negative space between these two towers. You can see it in here, in this deck. Oh, but this is green without black or yellow being, so they really could make green. Huh. So there goes my theory about yellow over black making green. It was a good idea, though. And you'll see with the artisan group that they didn't just, you know, create a cup and then repeat it 6 times. I mean, they really stayed true to the original, right? Each one of these cups is original to the original, you know, and they were hand-drawn. So in that way, they were able to keep the charm, you know. So we're talking about clarity, revitalization, and retaining the charm, you know, of the original deck. Now, I don't know how many of you are going to hang in there till the end. I guess I'm about halfway through the deck, comparing the two decks. But I think you get the gist of what is going on and what the artisan group has done, you know, for the Conver. I think it's definitely brought it back to life for the 21st century. And it's made it look really modern, you know. It looks like a modern deck. Oh, I got this mixed up here. My apologies. So they made some changes to the garment, a little bit of artistic license there. It made more sense to them to believe it looked like this. And I'll probably, maybe I'll do another video, you know, comparing it to the Millennium rather than putting the Millennium in this one. Here, there's this unexplained thing with the hat and the crown. And they completed whatever that was. I don't know if we'll ever know what that really is, but it's like a crown through a hat. I don't know. It's weird. I think we have two more suits left. Again, as with the suit of swords, you know, it's just more present. You know, the reds are sharp, razor sharp. The blacks are razor sharp. So it's totally revitalized, totally crisp. And boy, you got to give Conver credit, because when you look at it, you know, it really is a modern design. You know, it just looks so modern. And it's his design from 1760, so the guy was an artist. And the detail in there. A nice change. A nice adjustment here as well. And you'll see that with all of the batons. And if you're hanging with me still, I really appreciate it. I guess it's kind of late in the game to ask you to give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. That way you'll be able to continue receiving my videos if you like them. And the gist of this video, though, is to support Artisan Tarot. I'll give all their information down below. As long as their Kickstarter is active, I'll leave the link up to that after the Kickstarter is over. I'll just leave their website where you could purchase the deck if there's any left. Again, the clarification is in the blanket or the garment of the horse. And they chose to make the horse more consistent with the rest of the deck, I guess. Because here he was painted as though he was part of the garment. Ah, and they gave her, they made the wreath of foliage, they made it green, as it probably was intended to be. And I will be doing more videos using the Artisan Tarot to do sample reading, sample demonstration readings. I know some of you like that, so I'm going to continue with that. Again here, the background. Yeah, so we have a hat and a crown through the hat. So strange. But it must have been a thing. Or maybe they were outdoors, who knows. Are those recules? The kind of chair that was taken outside. Oh yeah, Conver knew how to make green. So, the yellow over the black, I don't know what that was about. And one thing that I love, the decision that Artisan made was to keep the wonky irregularity, the asymmetricality, and it's evident in this card, right? That's just charming. I love it. So they kept true to the energy of the card, or the feel of the card, or they just clarified, revitalized, and breathed new life into it. So we're coming to the end with the deniers. I hope you support the Artisan project. I think you're going to love it. When I teach tarot to my students, and I do live sessions, and I also have a pre-recorded session. This is definitely a deck that I'm now including in the recommended decks. It's affordable. It's not outrageous. It's not outrageously priced. It's not, got the exorbitant price of maybe an art deck. And it's definitely a premier example of the TDM, if you want to learn from TDM. And it's got a friendliness about it because you can understand what you're looking at, right? Now the deck I bought, although I was gifted, the preview deck, this deck here, and bear in mind that there may be some changes with when the Kickstarter version comes out, there may be one or two little tweaks. But I was gifted with it, with the intent of, giving an honest review, which I have, but I love it so much I'm going to be doing several videos, and I'm going to be using, endorsing it with my classes, to use the deck in for my class, So it's a great deck. The version I bought, I bought the $53 deck, and then I bought a scarf. One of the incentive gifts was a scarf, which I just thought was gorgeous. And if it's big enough, I'll use it on my body because I love it so much. So there you have it. The Artisan Tarot deck that brings clarity and revitalization to the Nicholas Conver Tarot of Marseille. So go check them out. Please do support them. And until next time, friends, peace. I'll be doing other videos with this, maybe another one today, and maybe a few tomorrow. Until next time, stay well and peace.